Hello and welcome viewers, I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has welcomed US President Donald Trump's plan for a US-led trilateral group with Qatar to address mutual grievances. Netanyahu has assured Qatar's Prime Minister that Israel targeted Hamas and not the Qataris when the airstrike in Doha had taken place. He's also expressed regret and apologized for the same. US President Donald Trump has unveiled a Gaza peace plan calling for immediate ceasefire, release of hostages and the exclusion of Hamas from future governance. Trump has warned of military support for Israel if Hamas rejects the deal. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority has welcomed the proposal as sincere and determined. Turkey, Italy and Spain have also welcomed President Trump's Gaza ceasefire plan in addition to Muslim Arab nations earlier doing so. These three countries have now praised efforts to end the violence, release hostages and ensure humanitarian aid. These leaders have emphasized upon the need for lasting peace and support a two-state solution. Donald Trump has announced sweeping new tariffs on imported wood products including lumber, cabinets and furniture, citing national security and economic resilience. The move targets key Canadian imports and aims to boost US manufacturing. Tariff hikes will roll out starting the 14th of October. Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared that Russian forces are prevailing in their battle with Ukraine. He's also termed the battle as righteous. He's emphasized upon national unity and determination. Now, despite the conflict dragging on, Putin has vowed to continue his offensive efforts. Ukraine has reported that a Russian drone strike has killed a family of 4 in the Sumy region. Officials have confirmed that the attack targeted a residential building in Chernechnya village. Now, rescuers have recovered the parents and 2 young children. A building has collapsed at an Islamic boarding school in East Java in Indonesia, trapping dozens of pupils. Rescuers have pulled out 8 injured survivors. Meanwhile, 3 students are reported to have lost their lives. Over hundreds are estimated to be injured and 65 remain missing as efforts to rescue them continue. Top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer has stated that differences with US President Donald Trump remain after a key White House meeting to avoid a government shutdown did not result in any sort of agreement for avoiding the same. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance has stated that the US is headed to shutdown, blaming the Democrats. All right, viewers, those are the headlines. You have some breaking news coming in from Pakistan. A devastating bomb has exploded in a car outside the headquarters of Pakistan's paramilitary forces in the city of Qatar. The blast killed at least 10 people and have left several others injured. The explosion was so powerful that it was heard miles away, with ambulances rushing to the scene. The attack took place outside the Frontier Constabulary. No group has till now claimed responsibility, but separatist groups in the region have previously targeted both civilians and security forces. Authorities fear that the death toll could rise even further. You can see the moment the bomb goes off, it was there within a car. This deadly explosion was reportedly so severe that it could be heard miles away. All right, viewers, shifting focus away from Pakistan towards other developments coming in. The White House has stated that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has apologized to Qatar and has promised that there will be no further strikes on its territory. The apology came during a phone call where Netanyahu expressed regrets over the strike in Doha. Let's in fact listen in to what Trump had to say about this later.
On the phone, and Bibi was talking. Prime Minister Al Thani was of Qatar. They really had a heart-to-heart conversation. It was a great conversation, I thought. It was productive. It was everything that you need to have something turn out to be successful. And I want to thank Bibi, and I want to thank the Prime Minister. It was fantastic. We agreed to launch a formal trilateral mechanism between Israel, Qatar, and the United States to begin a dialogue to enhance mutual security, correct misperceptions, and avoid future mistakes.
With us on the broadcast is Aharon Levako. Sir, the Israeli Prime Minister's office has confirmed that Netanyahu has welcomed Trump's proposal to create a forum aimed at easing tensions. That's not all. In fact, we've also seen the landmark 20-point deal that was jointly unveiled by Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Are you optimistic about this Gaza peace deal that has come forward? Would it lead to lasting peace in the region?
Well, that's a big word, optimistic. You have to be optimistic because people are tired of the war. People are tired of deaths on both sides. Of course, we would love to see a breakthrough. Optimistic, I don't know. And I'll tell you why. The focus right now is on Hamas. If Hamas agree to the 20-point principle, the war is over. We will get our captives back, alive and dead captives. They will get some of their terrorist prisoners. The war will be over. It's been 2 years. So I would love it if Hamas would accept it. But optimistic, I don't know. Based on Hamas's history, I'm not actually too optimistic, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope they really do. We want our captives back. We want this war to finish. And we want to see a time of peace. I think if they do agree, I think there will be a time of peace. You know, Donald Trump laid out in his 20 points some of the plans to get people like Tony Blair and an international group to rebuild Gaza, repopulate, re-educate, big plans. So I would love it if the war was over. You know, we're as I say, we're tired.
And speaking of Qatar, we do now have confirmation that Prime Minister Netanyahu has in fact expressed regret over the strikes that have taken place in Doha earlier. Now, Qatar, United States and Israel will be forming a trilateral mechanism to address mutual grievances. In your assessment, what could be these flashpoints in the Middle East that these three countries will now sit and address together?
Well, Qatar are very key mediators in this whole situation. So Benjamin Netanyahu, he didn't apologize for striking the terrorists. He apologized for striking them on Qatari soil. And he made it clear that he wasn't going after locals or after the government or after buildings, that he was going after terrorists. But he did apologize for doing it on Qatar soil and for killing one of their, I think it was one of their workers. So, yeah, he did that. But he made it clear. He made it clear we were striking terrorists. So he didn't apologize for that. But I think it was a good political move, strategic move, because of the alliance that is being formed with Qatar, with America, and with Israel about moving ahead, moving forward. Now, Qatar, they are the ones that are going to be pressuring Hamas. So, and the reason why they've got that leverage is because Qatar, along with the Iranians, they have been the funders of Hamas. So they have that bit of leverage. The big question we go back to is, will Hamas listen to Qatar and most of the Arab nations who are also behind it and who basically have turned their backs on Hamas? So Qatar are playing a key role in this mediation role and moving forward with peace and with rebuilding of Gaza.
All right, sir. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we shift our focus away from the Middle East towards the war in Europe between Russia and Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has called his country's war with Ukraine a righteous battle. He's framed it as a national struggle. In an address to Russians on the anniversary of the Russia-organized referendum in Ukraine's Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, Putin has claimed that Russia is prevailing in the ongoing war and that the entire nation supports its troops. Listen in.
Дорогие друзья, уважаемые граждане России, сердечно поздравляю вас с праздником, с Днем воссоединения Донецкой и Луганской народных республик, Запорожской и Херсонской областей с нашей большой сплоченной страной. 3 года назад на референдумах в Донбассе и Новороссии миллионы наших соотечественников самостоятельно и свободно определили свое будущее. Сделали реальностью мечту, с которой жили долгие годы. Приняли важнейшее, судьбоносное решение – быть со своим Отечеством, с Россией. Сегодня, защищая этот выбор, поднимаются в атаку наши бойцы и командиры. Ведет праведную битву и трудится вся страна, вся Россия. Вместе мы защищаем нашу любовь к Родине и единство исторической судьбы. Сражаемся.
Additionally, Putin has expressed confidence in guaranteeing Russia's security and has promised for peace in the Donbas region. Now, this statement comes amid a shift in the United States' approach towards Ukraine. US President Donald Trump, who met with Putin in Alaska earlier this year, now believes that Ukraine could regain all territories that it lost in the war. Additionally, the US is also considering supplying Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine, which is a move that could allow Kiev to strike deeper into Russian territory, giving it an edge in the battle on the ground. Meanwhile, Moscow has responded, warning that US military personnel assisting with the launching of these missiles would be targeted. Russia has further stressed that it reserves the right to strike military installations in countries that allow Ukraine to use weapons against Russia. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant, defense analyst, joining us from Riga. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting developments, as I mentioned earlier. The United States, particularly the Trump administration, has been making some rather contrasting remarks. When Trump came to power for the second time, he insulted Zelensky at the Oval Office. Now he goes at the UNGA and says that Ukraine can regain its lost territory. With the Trump administration now backing Zelensky, do you think Putin is worried and due to that he's making these strongly worded statements?
I think that could well be the case. I mean, we're still not sure, let's be honest about this. We're still not sure exactly what Trump intends, whether this is just going to be words or whether actually those words will be followed up by actions with better weapons, new weapons, and at a faster rate, because they've been very slow and delaying things since Hegseth has been the defense minister. But, you know, Putin often makes these statements, and some of these are very grandiose, but we've seen no action from Russia that would suggest that they are confident enough to actually attack anybody in NATO.
And do you think NATO is still treading rather carefully because they do not want to embroil themselves in a hot war with Russia, even though we have seen the Weimar mechanism in place with the meeting that has taken place in Warsaw recently? Do you still think NATO is treading rather carefully and is not towing the line?
I think that's a good way of putting it. I mean, they don't see at the moment that what Russia has actually done has been sufficient to turn what most people call hybrid attacks into a hot war. But I am absolutely sure that patience is running thin in most of the larger NATO countries, and it's only going to take one small spark to start things moving in a different fashion against Russia. We just have to wait and see whether Russia just keeps playing these games of drones floating in and out, or whether they actually attack something directly.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking some further developments from Europe. We're now learning that EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has clarified that the proposed loan to Ukraine funded by frozen Russian assets would not involve seizing the assets. Listen in to what she had to say.
However, we need a more structural solution for military support. And this is why I have put forward the idea of a reparations loan that is based on the immobilized Russian assets. The loan would not be dispersed in one go, but in tranches and with conditions attached. And we will strengthen our own defense industry by ensuring that part of the loan is used for procurement in Europe and with Europe. Importantly, there is no seizing of the assets. Ukraine has to repay the loan if Russia is paying reparations. If Russia is paying reparations, the perpetrator must be held responsible.
The proposal set to be discussed by EU leaders in Copenhagen would use frozen Russian central bank assets to provide up to 170 billion euros to Ukraine. However, it has sparked concerns among EU states over legal risks and the potential impact on financial stability. Von der Leyen has meanwhile stressed that the plan does not violate international law, but the details, of course, remain under development. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant. We've just heard what von der Leyen has had to say. She's proposed and framed this as a structural solution, called this reparations on behalf of Russia. And she's also stated that the loan will not be disbursed in one go. It will be done in tranches with conditions attached. In your perspective, what sort of conditions would you expect the EU to place over Ukraine?
Do you know, to be honest, I have no idea. And the reason I have no idea is because this is still an idea. It's extremely fluffy. It will do nothing actually to help Ukraine in the short term, because there will be discussions after discussions after discussions. We talked about this money over 2 years ago. It's the same money, and we still have not got a solution, primarily because Hungary and Belgium are digging their heels in about the law, and it's not the right thing to do. But, you know, at some stage, the European Union has actually got to get its act together and start doing something, not just talking about these things. So conditions, goodness knows. We have to wait and see what dreamland ideas they come up with.
So despite, keeping aside until now the stalling that has been taking place because of differences within EU nations, in your assessment, what's then needed to be urgently done to ensure that Ukraine's security in the short term is guaranteed?
Only leadership. There's nothing else. We just need some actually hard leadership. It needs someone, you know, one of the senior people, either Macron or Rutte or someone to actually to say, come on, we've got to stop messing about, because messing about is what it is. And this just helps Russia. It gives Russia more time. In fact, I even begin to wonder whether one or two of the leaders are not actually doing this deliberately to assist Russia in the same way that Trump has been. So we're in difficult and dangerous times, and what's needed is strong leadership and action. We're not getting that. We're getting talk, conferences, and meetings.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for taking our time, sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we shift our focus to more developments coming in. YouTube has agreed to pay over $20 million to settle a lawsuit filed by US President Donald Trump and other plaintiffs following his suspension from the platform in 2021. Now, according to a court filing, $22 million of the settlement would be used to support the construction of a White House state ballroom and will be held in a tax-exempt trust for the National Mall. The remaining $2.5 million will be distributed among other plaintiffs in the lawsuit, including several conservative figures. Now, the settlement does not imply any admission of fault or liability by YouTube, and the company stated that the agreement was made to resolve the dispute and avoid further litigation. YouTube had suspended Trump's account after the January 6th attack on the US Capitol in 2021, citing violations of its policy against inciting people. The platform reinstated his account more than 2 years later ahead of the 2024 elections to ensure fair access for all candidates. Shifting focus away from the United States towards Indonesia. Rescuers are now scrambling to locate the 38 people feared to be trapped under rubble after an Islamic boarding school collapsed in the province of East Java. Meanwhile, dozens were at the afternoon prayers. At least 3 are reported to have lost their lives and 102 have been evacuated from the site at the Al-Qonizi school in the town of Siddajaro when the unstable building collapsed during construction. Now, some rescuers have reacted. Let's listen in to what they had to say.
Evakuasi tentunya kita fokus pada yang mati hidup ya. Kita udah yang mati hidup, kita tentunya berhati-hati sekali karena kondisi bangunan yang runtuh itu, kemiringannya itu masih memungkinkan sekali untuk runtuh kembali. Masih banyak sekali yang masih terdengar untuk menangis atau menjerit ya. Artinya mereka perlu dihidup.
Shifting focus to the impact of Typhoon Boiler. The typhoon has left a trail of devastation in Vietnam, with the death toll rising to 19. This is information according to the country's Environment Ministry. Now, the typhoon made landfall on Sunday, bringing winds of up to 130 kilometers per hour and staying over land for almost 12 hours. Now, the extended duration of the storm was unusual and official authorities described it as very rare. Additionally, the disaster management authorities have reported that a search is still underway for the missing 21 people, including several sailors whose fishing vessels were displaced by the strong winds and currents. Now, the storm has left more than 44,000 homes damaged, many with roofs torn off, particularly in central Ha Tinh province. Almost 800 homes were flooded and nearly 6,000 hectares of crops were inundated. The damage to infrastructure and farmland is also severe. Electrical poles were down, which resulted in power outages affecting several central regions. Now, according to the Vietnamese reports, more than 53,000 people were evacuated to temporary shelters in schools and medical centers prior to the typhoon's landfall. With the situation still evolving on the ground, authorities are monitoring rising river levels and the threat of landslides, especially in the northern regions. All right, viewers, this is all we have for this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World as we dip into a quick short break.